Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm so glad you're here. Before we dive in, I want to know where you're watching from. Are you tuning in from the USA, UK, Canada, somewhere in Europe or Africa? Drop your country in the comments. We'd love to know where our audience is from. And who knows, maybe we'll even say your name in our next video. Now make sure you sit back, relax and get comfortable, because the story you're about to hear is truly thrilling and full of twists. Trust me, you don't want to miss a single moment. So without further ado, let's dive into the Seoul's underworld. Agreed on one thing: Kang Min-yi would die alone in his glass tower, and he preferred it that way. But on an unremarkable Thursday evening in the 4th Street Market, his driver nearly ploughed through a street vendor's cart. "Are you blind?" The voice cut through the diesel haze like a blade. Min-yi's hand was already on the door handle, his jaw set. No one, absolutely no one, spoke to his convoy that way, not if they valued their kneecaps. He stepped onto the cracked pavement in his 15 million Tom Ford suit, ready to teach this fool a lesson about respect. But then he saw her. Yoon Ara, a black street vendor with honey-brown curls catching the golden hour light, standing protectively in front of her handmade jewelry stall, her chest heaving with righteous fury. She didn't flinch when his 3 bodyguards moved toward her. She didn't even blink. One look. That's all it took for 7 years of permafrost to crack down the middle. She had no idea who he was. She didn't recognize the 200 million watch on his wrist. She didn't see the man who'd ordered the disappearance of 5 rival bosses in the past year. She just saw a reckless driver who almost destroyed her livelihood. And that fearless ignorance made him want to possess her like nothing. Yoon Ara had exactly 87,000 won in her savings account, roughly $65 USD. A phone she charged at the public library, and a stubborn pride that wouldn't let her crawl back to her judgmental relatives in Busan. Hand-painted ceramics, traditional African-Korean fusion jewelry. She called out, her voice competing with the market's chaos. She smiled at every passerby, even the ones who looked through her like she was invisible. Every sale meant another week of rent. Another week of proving she could make it on her own terms. At 26, this wasn't the life she'd imagined. 2 years ago, she'd been a design student at Seoul National University of Science and Technology, dreaming of opening her own boutique. Then her visa complications started. School became impossible. Her part-time gigs dried up. But instead of going home in defeat, she'd carved out this little corner of the market with nothing but grit, creativity, and a smile that refused to dim. She'd lost everything except her hope, and she'd be damned if she lost that too. "Miss, you need to move." Ara looked up. A woman in an expensive hanbok stood before her, flanked by 2 men in dark suits with bulges under their jackets that definitely weren't phones. "I have a permit," Ara said firmly, wiping ceramic dust from her hands. "I paid for this spot through the end of the month." The woman's smile was made of ice. "That permit is no longer valid. This district is under new management. You have 10 minutes to pack up." Ara's heart sank, but her spine straightened. "New management? Lady, this is a public market. You can't just..." One of the suited men stepped forward. That's when the motorcade of 3 black Maybachs pulled up to the market entrance, so out of place they might as well have been spaceships. Ara barely glanced at them. Rich people were always slumming through trendy neighborhoods for Instagram photos. The man in the middle of the Maybach didn't exit immediately. He let the silence do the work for him. Ara watched as every vendor within a 30-meter radius suddenly found reasons to pack up early, their eyes carefully avoiding the conv. The woman who'd been threatening her moments ago was now trembling, her expensive jewelry suddenly looking like costume props. When Kang Min-yi finally stepped out, the world seemed to recalibrate around him. He was younger than Ara expected, maybe early 30s, with the kind of face that belonged on magazine covers, if magazine covers could capture the particular shade of danger that clung to him like expensive cologne. His black suit probably cost more than her entire year's rent. Who authorized you to clear this section? His voice was quiet, which somehow made it more terrifying. The woman stammered in Korean something about new territorial agreements and protection fees. Min-yi held up one hand. She went silent mid-sentence. Then his eyes found Ara's. And the strangest thing happened. The hardness in his face flickered, just for a microsecond, like a computer glitching. He took 3 steps toward her stall, and his security team moved with him like a choreographed shadow. You made these. He picked up one of her ceramic pendants, a piece she'd painted with traditional Korean clouds merged with West African adinkra symbols. Yes, Ara's voice came out steadier than she felt. Everything here is handmade. One of a kind. How much? That one's 40,000 won. He pulled out a money clip thick enough to choke on and peeled off 500,000 won, setting it on her cart. I'll take everything. Ara's mouth fell open. Everything. I can't possibly. You can and you will. He gestured to one of his men who immediately began carefully collecting her entire inventory. This district is now under my protection. No one touches this stall. No one threatens this vendor. Understood? The last word was directed at the elegant woman who nodded so hard. For 3 days, Ara felt like she was living in someone else's life. Her landlord suddenly claimed her rent was taken care of for the next 6 months. The market administrator personally delivered a premium vendor license with her name already printed on it. Even Mrs. Kim from the dumpling stall started treating her with nervous respect. Ara knew exactly who was behind it. What she didn't know was why, or how to make it stop. She got her answer on the 4th day when she returned to her tiny apartment to find Kang Min-yi sitting in her only chair, looking criminally out of place among her second-hand furniture. How did you get in here? Her hand was already reaching for the kitchen knife block. Your lock is embarrassingly easy to pick. He stood, and even in her own space he seemed to own all the air in the room. We need to discuss your business model. My business model? You mean the one where I actually work for my money instead of… She stopped herself, remembering the bowing woman, the fear in everyone's eyes. What are you? I think you know what I am. Say it. His jaw tightened. I run the Kangdi Syndicate. We control 70% of Seoul's underground economy. Real estate, entertainment, protection, imports. He said it like he was listing grocery items. And now you. Excuse me. I've cleared your debts, secured your business location. You're under my protection now. Ara laughed and it came out slightly unhinged. I didn't ask for any of that. I don't want your blood money. I don't want to be owned by some. You're not owned. He moved closer and she hated how her body betrayed her by not moving away. You're protected. There's a difference. Then let me pay you back. Everyone's. Impossible. Why? His eyes, God, they were so dark they were almost black, held hers with an intensity that made her knees weak. Because I don't want your money, Yoon Ara, I want. He stopped, seeming genuinely confused by his own sentence. I want to make sure nothing happens to you. Why, she whispered. He looked at her like she'd asked him to explain quantum physics. I don't know. The honesty of it disarmed her completely. This terrifying man who clearly controlled life and death with a phone call stood in her apartment looking lost, like he'd woken up in a stranger's body. Have dinner with me, he said finally. That sounds like a terrible idea. It is, say yes anyway. Ara should have said no. Should have called the police, though she suspected that would be as useful as calling the tooth fairy. Should have run. Instead, she heard herself say, "One dinner, then you leave me alone." His smile was sharp enough to draw blood. We'll see. The restaurant had no name and no sign, just a discreet door in Gangnam that opened into the kind of luxury Ara had only seen in movies. It was completely empty except for them and a staff of 6 who moved like highly trained ghosts. "You rented out the entire restaurant," Ara said, sliding into a chair that probably cost more than her monthly food budget. "I own the restaurant." Minyi sat across from her, and somehow even that simple action looked dangerous. "I own the building. I find it easier to dine without an audience." "Must be lonely." Something flickered across his face. "It is." The honesty kept surprising her. She'd expected arrogance, maybe cruelty. Not this strange vulnerability that he seemed almost angry about feeling. The food arrived in waves, each dish a work of art. Minyi watched her eat with an intensity that should have been creepy but somehow wasn't. "Tell me about your jewelry," he said. "Why do you care?" "Because you care, and I'm trying to understand why I care that you care." Ara set down her chopsticks. "You're really bad at this." "At what?" "Human interaction." He almost smiled. "Yes, I've been told." So she told him. About her mother's Korean heritage and her father's Ghanaian roots, about growing up between cultures and never quite fitting in either. About discovering that she could blend both worlds in her art, creating something entirely new. About the dream of a real boutique, not just a market stall. Minyi listened like she was revealing state secrets, his full attention focused on her in a way that made her skin tingle. "And you," she asked, "how does someone become what you are?" His expression shuttered. "You inherit it. My father built this empire. I was raised to protect it, expand it. There was never a choice." "There's always a choice." "Not in my world." He reached across the table, his hand stopping just short of hers. "Which is why I shouldn't want you in it. You're light, Ara. Everything I touch turns dark." "Then don't touch me." "Too late." His fingers brushed hers and it felt like lightning. "From the moment I saw you, it was too late." The brick came through Ara's apartment window at 3 a.m., wrapped in a note written in Korean and English. "The Marble King's new toy. Break her or we will." She was still staring at it, glass crunching under her bare feet, when Minyi's security team crashed through her door 6 minutes later. He arrived 90 seconds after that, wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt that proved he was human under those suits, his hair disheveled and his eyes wild. "Are you hurt?" His hands were on her shoulders, turning her, checking for injuries with a thoroughness that would have been invasive if it wasn't so clearly terrified. "I'm fine. It's just a brick and some broken glass." "Just." He picked up the note and something in his face went absolutely arctic. "Pack a bag." "What? No, I'm not leaving my home because some coward throws." "That's not a request." He turned to her and she finally saw the monster everyone else feared. "The Young Syndicate knows about you. That means every rival I have knows about you. That means you're a target. So you're going to pack a bag, or I'm going to have my men pack it for you. But either way, you're leaving this apartment in the next 5 minutes." Ara wanted to argue, but the brick in her living room made a compelling counterpoint. "Where exactly am I supposed to go?" "My estate, where I can actually protect you." "So I trade one prison for a nicer one." His jaw clenched. "It's not a prison, it's a fortress, and right now that's what you need." She looked around her tiny apartment, her independence, her proof that she could make it on her own. Then she looked at the broken window and imagined what might come through it next time. Not a brick, not a note. "Fine, 1 week. Until you handle whatever this is. Deal, he said it too quickly, and Ara had the distinct feeling she'd just been expertly manipulated. His estate was in Pyeongchang-dong, the kind of neighborhood where houses had names instead of numbers. His was called Seollak, and it looked like a modern art museum had been crossed with a fortress. High walls, cameras everywhere, and enough security to protect a small country. Inside was worse, minimalist to the point of being sterile, all glass and steel and cold surfaces. It looked like a place where warmth came to die. The guest wing is on the 2nd floor, Min-yi said, suddenly formal now that they were in his territory. You'll have your own space. My staff will get you anything you need. And you. I'll be working. I have an organization to run and rivals to remind about consequences. He started to leave, and Ara surprised herself by catching his wrist. 3 days in paradise was making Ara lose her mind. Min-yi's estate had everything: a pool, a gym, a library that made her want to cry with joy, staff who appeared with food before she even knew she was hungry. It also had absolutely nothing to do. She tried to paint in the sunroom but felt too watched by the security cameras. She tried to relax but kept thinking about her stall sitting empty in the market. On the 3rd night she went hunting for Min-yi and found him in his office at 2 a.m., surrounded by papers and looking like exhaustion personified. "You're still awake," she said from the doorway. He looked up and something in his face softened. "So are you. I can't sleep in that bed. It's too soft, too quiet, too everything." "Welcome to my life." He gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Come in. You're the most interesting thing that's happened in this office in 7 years. She sat, curling her legs under her, and watched him work. After a few minutes she asked, "What are you doing?" "Deciding who lives and who disappears." Her stomach dropped. "You're joking." "Only partially." He set down his pen. "The Young Syndicate has been testing boundaries. 3 of my shipments hijacked, 2 of my clubs vandalized, and now you threatened. I'm deciding how to respond proportionally. Proportionally to attempted murder. Welcome to my world, Ara. It's not pretty." "No," she stood, moved around the desk before she could think better of it. "It's not, but you are." He looked up at her, confused. "What? Pretty, under all this ice and violence and careful control? You're just a man who's exhausted and lonely and doesn't know how to stop being what everyone needs you to be." "Gareth, it came out as a warning. Tell me I'm wrong." He stood, and suddenly they were inches apart, and the air was charged with something far more dangerous than his professional violence. "You're not wrong, but knowing that doesn't change what I am." "Maybe I don't want you to change." She reached up, touched his face, and watched his eyes close like she'd wounded him. "Maybe I just want you to stop pretending you're made of marble." "If I stop pretending..." His hand came up to cover hers. "If I stop being careful, then don't be careful." The kiss happened like an avalanche, inevitable, devastating, impossible to stop once it started. His hands in her hair, her back against his desk. 7 years of ice melting into something so hot it should have set the room on fire. He kissed her like a drowning man finding air, like a starving man finding food, like someone who'd forgotten what it meant to feel anything suddenly remembering everything at once. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard. The problem with living in Min-yi's world was that eventually, Ara saw what that world actually looked like. It happened on her 10th night at the estate when she woke up thirsty and found his office door open, voices carrying into the hallway. She shouldn't have looked, but she did. Min-yi sat at his desk, and kneeling on the floor in front of him was a man with a swollen face and zip-tied hands. 2 of Min-yi's security team flanked him. I'll ask one more time, Minyi said, his voice that terrifying quiet. Who told the young syndicate about Ms. Yoon? I don't know anything, I swear. Minyi nodded once. The security guard on the left pulled out a knife. Ara must have made a sound because Minyi's head snapped toward the door. Their eyes met, and she watched him transform from the man who'd kissed her breathless 3 hours ago back into the Marble King. Get her out of here, he said flatly. But Ara was already running, her bare feet slapping against marble floors, her heart hammering against her ribs. She made it to the guest room and started throwing clothes into her bag with shaking hands. She'd been an idiot. A romantic fool. He was exactly what everyone said, a monster in an expensive suit. He appeared in her doorway as she was zipping her bag. Ara, stop. Get away from me. What you saw was exactly what you are. She whirled on him. You were going to torture that man. He betrayed me, put you in danger. So you hurt him, that's your answer to everything. Violence. Yes, he said it without apology. In my world, yes, mercy is weakness. Hesitation gets people killed. I am what I have to be to keep my people safe, to keep you safe. I didn't ask you to do that. I didn't ask for any of this. She grabbed her bag. I want to go home, my real home. Not this beautiful prison. Something cracked in his expression. You can't. Watch me. Ara, he moved to block the door, and for the first time she was actually afraid of him. If you leave here, the Young Syndicate will find you within 24 hours. They will hurt you to hurt me. Is that what you want? What I want is to not fall in love with a killer. The words hung in the air between them like smoke after a gunshot. Minyi went completely still. He couldn't seem to finish the sentence. Yeah, surprise. Tears were streaming down her face now. I'm in love with you. And I hate myself for it. Because you're everything I should run from, but when you look at me, I see the man you could be. The man you are when no one's watching. And it's killing me that he's buried under so much blood. Minyi crossed the room, cupped her face in his hands with a gentleness that contradicted everything she'd just witnessed. I'm not a good man, Ara. I've done things that would make you sick. I will do more things like that because it's who I am. But his voice cracked. But you're the only good thing I've touched that I haven't corrupted. And if loving me means you stay alive, then I'll take your hate. I'll take anything, just stay. I can't watch you become that person. The one in that office. Then don't watch, just stay. They stood there, holding each other like lifelines, both knowing this was impossible, both unable to let go. Ara woke up in an unfamiliar room with a headache like someone had split her skull open and duct tape over her mouth. The last thing she remembered was leaving Minyi's estate, finally leaving after 2 more days of painful silence, walking to the bus stop alone because she'd insisted she didn't need security. Stupid, so stupid. The room was concrete and windowless, lit by a single harsh bulb. Industrial space, probably a warehouse. Her hands were zip-tied in front of her, and when she tried to stand, she realized her ankle was chained to a metal ring in the floor. The door opened, and an older Korean man entered, flanked by guards. He had the same dangerous elegance Minyi had, but where Minyi's eyes held carefully controlled fire, this man's eyes were just empty. Ms. Yoon. I apologize for the accommodations. His English was perfect, accent minimal. I am Young T1, and you are currently a guest of the Young Syndicate. Guest implies I had a choice. He smiled. You're Kang Minyi's first mistake in 7 years. That makes you very valuable. He won't negotiate for me. Oh, I think he will. Our sources say he's been distracted lately. Soft, that's dangerous in our business. T1 pulled out a phone, snapped a photo of her. I'm going to send this to the Marble King. Then we'll see what he values more, his pride or your life. The message must have sent because 15 minutes later, Ara's phone, which they'd left in her pocket deliberately, started ringing. T1 put it on speaker. Let her go. Minyi's voice was barely recognizable. Now. Ah, there's emotion. How fascinating. The Ice King melts. Name your terms. Your complete withdrawal from the Gangnam district. All holdings, all operations, signed over to me. You'll return to North Seoul and never expand south again. That's 40% of my organization's revenue. I know, you have 6 hours to decide, your empire or your woman. Choose wisely, Kang Minyi. He hung up and Ara's heart was hammering so hard she thought it might break her ribs. Minyi wouldn't give up his empire. He couldn't. His entire life, his father's legacy, everything he'd built. She wasn't worth that. She just hoped he understood that. Hoped he wouldn't do something stupid and heroic and completely catastrophic. The 6 hours crawled by. Ara counted seconds, then gave up. T1 returned at what she guessed was hour 5 with champagne. To celebrate the restructuring of Seoul's underworld, he said, pouring himself a glass. Your boyfriend chose the noble path, signed everything over. Very romantic, very foolish. Ara's stomach dropped. He didn't. Oh, he did. Contracts are being notarized as we speak. In exchange, I promise to release you unharmed. T1's smile was razor-sharp. Of course I lied. The gunshot was so loud in the concrete space that Ara screamed behind her tape. But it wasn't her blood painting the floor. It was T1's, a perfect hole in the center of his forehead, his champagne glass still in his hand. The door exploded inward, and Minyi walked through the smoke and chaos like an avenging angel, gun in one hand, fury radiating from every pore. His security team flooded in behind him, and the brief firefight that followed was brutal and efficient. When the smoke cleared, Minyi was cutting her free with shaking hands, pulling the tape from her mouth gently despite the violence still in his eyes. Seoul was burning, metaphorically, and in 2 actual locations. Minyi had declared total war on the Young Syndicate within 1 hour of rescuing Ara, and the city's underworld was tearing itself apart, choosing sides. Ara watched it unfold from Minyi's command center, a secured room in his estate with more screens than a NASA launch. She shouldn't be here, shouldn't be seeing the tactical decisions being made in real time. But Minyi had refused to let her out of his sight, and honestly she couldn't blame him. Young's lieutenants are fragmenting, one of his advisors reported. 3 have already offered to defect in exchange for protection. Accept it. But surveillance on all of them. Minyi's voice was pure ice. Anyone who betrayed once will betray again. The Elder Council is requesting an audience. That made Minyi pause. Ara had learned about the Elder Council over the past week, the 5 family heads who jointly ruled Seoul's underworld for 3 decades. Minyi's father had been one of them before his death. They were essentially organized crime royalty, and they didn't make requests lightly. When? Minyi asked. Now, they're at the Schiller Hotel, private dining room. Minyi looked at Ara, something complicated crossing his face. I have to go. Then I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. Minyi, she stood, moved to him. They want to talk about me, don't they? About how the Marble King got soft over a street vendor, about how I'm your weakness. His silence was answer enough. Then I should be there. Let them see I'm not some helpless thing to be used against you. You're not helpless, you're precious, there's a difference. Then let me prove I can handle your world. He studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Stay close to me, don't speak unless spoken to, and if I tell you to leave, you leave immediately. The Schiller Hotel's private dining room was exactly what Ara expected, opulent to the point of obscenity, with 5 elderly Korean men seated around a table like they were deciding the fate of nations, which in Seoul's underworld they essentially were. Minyi entered with Ara at his side, and she felt 5 pairs of ancient, calculating eyes assess her like she was a chess piece. Kang Minyi, the eldest, spoke, his voice surprisingly strong. "You've brought the girl, bold. She's the reason we're meeting, seemed appropriate." They sat. Ara kept her spine straight, her face neutral, channeling every ounce of confidence she'd needed to survive alone in Seoul. "The Yoon matter is resolved," one of the other elders said. "T1 is dead, his organization scattered. You've won your war." "Then why are we here?" Minyi's hand found Ara's under the table, squeezed. "Because you've changed. And change in our world is dangerous." The eldest leaned forward. "Your father, God rest him, would be ashamed. The Marble King reduced to this by a woman. You've shown weakness, made yourself a target." "I've shown that I'm human. There's a difference." "In our world there is no difference. You're either feared or you're dead." Minyi's jaw clenched, and Ara could feel the tension vibrating through him. She'd promised to stay quiet, but watching these old men tear down the person Minyi was trying to become made her blood boil. "With respect," she said, and 5 heads turned to her like she detonated a bomb. "You're all wrong." "Ara," Minyi started. "No, they need to hear this." She met the eldest's eyes. "You think love makes him weak? I've seen him burn down an entire organization to keep me safe. I've watched him outmaneuver, outfight, and outlast everyone who thought he was vulnerable. He's not weaker because he loves me. He's more dangerous. Because now he has something to protect. And a man protecting something he loves is the most terrifying thing in the world." Silence, then impossibly the eldest laughed, a dry, papery sound. "She has fire, I see why you chose her." He looked at Minyi. "Perhaps we were wrong. Perhaps this is evolution, not weakness. Your generation will inherit our empire. Maybe it needs someone willing to feel something other than cold ambition." "Does that mean we have your blessing?" Minyi asked carefully. "It means we won't actively oppose you. But understand, boy, the moment she becomes more liability than asset, we will remove her. Counsel first, romance second. Always." They were dismissed, and Minyi practically dragged Ara out of the hotel, his face unreadable until they reached his car. Then he slammed her against the door and kissed her so hard she saw stars. "Never do that again," he breathed against her mouth. "Which part?" "The part where you defend me to the most powerful men in Korea, like you're not absolutely terrified." "Who says I wasn't terrified?" "That's my point. You were terrified and did it anyway." He kissed her again. "God, I love you." It was the first time he'd said it out loud. Ara felt tears spring to her eyes. "Say it again." "I love you. I've loved you since you yelled at my driver. I'll love you when we're old and this empire is ash. I'll love you past the end of everything." "Then prove it," Ara whispered. "Leave this world, build something legitimate. Something clean." Minyi pulled back, studied her face. "You're asking me to give up everything I am." "No, I'm asking you to become everything you could be." The choice hung between them, as fragile and dangerous as everything else in their impossible love story. 6 months later, the 4th Street market looked different. Cleaner, safer, with new infrastructure and vendor protections that had mysteriously appeared after a series of anonymous donations. Ara's stall was gone, replaced by something much bigger. Yoon and Kang Cultural Designs read the sign above the boutique storefront, a real shop with glass windows, proper lighting, and enough space to finally do justice to her vision of blending Korean and African aesthetics. Inside, her pieces were displayed like art, because that's what they were. Min-yi stood at the back, watching her interact with customers, and marveled at how far they'd both come. The Kangdi syndicate still existed, but it looked different now. Legitimate investments, above-board businesses, the slow, painful work of laundering not money but an entire legacy. It turned out the elder council had been right about one thing. Min-yi was more dangerous in love. Dangerous enough to dismantle his father's empire piece by piece and rebuild it into something his father never imagined, something legal, something he wouldn't have to hide from the woman he loved. "Stop lurking and come help me," Ara called over her shoulder, her smile bright enough to make his chest hurt. He moved to her side, and together they showed an elderly customer the intricacies of a pendant that merged Joseon-era clouds with Ghanaian Sankofa symbols. This was his life now, not shadows and violence but light and creation, not the marble king but just a man learning how to be human. "Mr. Kang," a young man entered the shop, clearly nervous. "My father sent me. He's one of your former associates. He wanted to know if you're hiring for your new security consulting firm." Min-yi exchanged a glance with Ara. The security consulting firm was his compromise, a way to use his skills and contacts legitimately, helping businesses that actually needed protection rather than providing it through intimidation. "Have him send his resume to the office," Min-yi said. "We're always looking for people who want to do the work the right way." After the young man left, Ara leaned into him. "The right way? Listen to you, all reformed and ethical. Only because you reformed me." "No, you reformed yourself. I just gave you a reason to try." The bell above the door chimed. More customers, more of the legitimate life they were building together. Min-yi looked around at the shop, at Ara's joy, at the future they were creating from the ashes of his past. He'd been the marble king, cold and untouchable, for 7 years. It took one glance at a woman with fire in her eyes to shatter that marble and find the man underneath.